One thing we can say is that when we look at Moderna and Pfizer, there may be a couple of explanations for at least why there is this higher antibody response. Number one, Moderna is given 4 weeks after the initial dose versus Pfizer is given 3 weeks after the initial dose. What does that mean? Well, you have to understand the second dose always is basically the dose that's going to respond to the system getting primed by the first dose. And so the theory would go, if you give your system longer to get primed, in other words, be ready for that second dose, the more robust you have. And that's one of the reasons we space out vaccines. Like even if you're going to get your measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, you don't get, 3 1 day apart, or you don't get hepatitis B 2 days apart. Or you don't get hepatitis A. In fact, hepatitis A is 6 months apart. So different vaccines need a certain time to think of it as almost your system to percolate with the first one, get your bone marrow ready and recognizing. And the way I would sort of describe it is think of like the first dose as setting up the factory to produce cars or automobile. The first dose, they hire the workers, they get the plant, they train the workers and they get them ready to go. Okay. And yes, they may make a couple of cars, but really the first dose is to prime the system, meaning have your bone marrow, your B cells be set up the manufacturing process to create this new antibody that your body's never created before. So the first dose is the primer. And then you get a second dose, which then hits you, and then you get a big antibody response. So in this case, the argument could be made that with the Moderna vaccine, you have an extra week to get your factory in order and hire more employees. Okay. And then you get the second dose. And of course, what's going to happen? And the question people ask is, why did Pfizer or why did Moderna pick 4 weeks versus 3 weeks? Well, when a new vaccine is coming out, they don't know the optimal schedule. And during the middle of a pandemic, they really couldn't break it up into multiple arms. Normally, what I would have imagined would have happened is they would have taken different doses of the vaccine, different amounts of the vaccine, in different schedules, taken 2, 3, 4, 5 years to come out with the perfect schedule based on breaking the groups out into, you get a quarter dose, you get a half dose, you get a full dose, and this group gets double the dose. And within those group, one gets the booster after 3 weeks, a portion of that group gets it after 6 weeks, and a portion of that gets it after 8 weeks. And then after 3, 4 years of doing all that, we will come up with the optimal schedule. But when you're having hundreds of thousands of people dying in the country, and it's Operation Warp Speed to try to come out with something, just sort of like, you pick a dose, you pick an interval, you get 2 groups, try it because you're trying to get the vaccine out to save lives.